I know I always get the awesome time slots for my presentations. The last one I did was right before lunch about 6 months ago, and everybody couldn't wait to get the hell out of Dodge and be done with my presentation. This is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart, building a national beer brand. The first brewery I worked for in 1996 was a 4-state brewery. The next brewery I worked for, Rogue Ales out of Oregon. We were a 50-state brewery when I inherited it, and we started export to 20 different countries. I went to work for Dogfish Head, started with 30 states, went back to 26 states, and then went forward to 32 states. New Holland Brewery that I recently just left, we were in 21 states when I started, and then we were 28 when I left. And this new venture I'm on right now with Virtue Cider, we're actually realigning our entire network across the country. In the next 24 months, we'll be in all 50 markets. So I love talking about this topic. This is going to be a real down and dirty, pretty simple, some of the things that I would do if I was rolling out a beer brand or cider brand across the country. These are the things and the steps that I would take in order to accomplish the things that you need to get accomplished. Some things even before you start on this journey that I like to call, there's some things that you got to ask yourself. Why are you going to do this? Why do you want to be a national brand? I just spent 8 hours yesterday in the ABI headquarters working on a business plan, so I'm a big plan guy. Plan the work the plan. If you're going to embark on a national journey, then you got to have something written down, something to follow, a playbook, ideas, but you got to get it in writing. I'm a huge guy that needs to put stuff on paper, checklist, did I do it, did I didn't, so get a plan together. What's my story? We just talked about storytelling, I love this. What is my story? How do you resonate to become a national brand? It's one thing, again, we were just saying that it's one thing just to say I'm a 5th generation or I make killer beer or here's my IPA. Right? What's the story behind it that if you're a brewery in Delaware is going to resonate into California, Seattle, San Diego, Texas, these hotbeds of craft beer? Why are you so important to become a national brand? And then if my story, I get it dialed in, is it relevant? Is it going to resonate? Is this something that people hold on to? You have to have your story if you're going to expand across the country. What's in it for me and what's in it for the consumer? Again, going back to the story and going into why you're why you're moving along this path to become a national brand. I mean, what does the consumer get out of you coming from Delaware, coming from New York, and being in California? You've got to understand, what are you giving those guys? What is it that is important to that consumer when you travel and thousands of miles away from your home base? And then is there an ends to the means? I mean, once you become a national brand, there's no more territory, right? I mean, it's pretty simple. You can do some international business, but once you're in all 50 states, having an idea why that all 50 state model is so important to you and what the end objective is, once you're in those 50 states, you got to have that in your mind or written down. And then being a national brand, back when I first started, it was pretty easy. You just kind of shipped some beer across the country, did some registration, and that was it. Nowadays, it costs a hell of a lot of money to become a national brand on the beer side. I mean, you're talking about transit costs that were way more than they were 20 years ago, getting in to see that marketplace, people, whatever it may be. To become a national brand, it costs a hell of a lot more money than it has in the past. Okay, so once you decide that you're going to go on this national march across the country, there is a bunch of different strategies that you can embark on to get there. So this is not listed in any in order of importance. I'm sorry, I've been struggling with a cold for like a week already. So, defining, I always say local. When I was at Dogfish, we had a local strategy, which actually entailed like 7 states, but we called it local, and we called it our concentric circle strategy. So it's states that were within 100 miles of Delaware, we called our home market. So that was our concentric circle strategy, was to dominate those home markets and expand out from that. We basically carved the country up into 5 circles, and we called them our concentric circle strategy, started with our local strategy. There's regional strategies where you kind of like just take giant chunks and you go, okay, I'm going to go Jersey, Maryland, DC, Virginia, and kind of grab a hold of states. You're going to do California, you're going to do Oregon, Washington, Arizona, Nevada, so you have your West Coast regional strategy. So there's a multi-state strategy that you can follow. There's one which I call the national strategy, where you're really kind of anchoring in those big beer markets. So you're really like, hey, I'm going to go after California, I'm going to go after Texas, I'm going to go after Florida, I'm going to get Illinois, and really focus in on what I call the national big beer markets. And then this is the one I inherited at Rogue, which was pretty awesome. The shotgun approach, basically retailers calling us up and saying, hey, I want to sell your beer in Atlanta, I want to sell your beer in Tampa, I want to sell your beer in Tennessee, and it was a retailer that would call us. We'd say, yeah, that's cool, tell us your favorite distributor, get that number, call that distributor, ship them some beer, and we're off and running. I like to call that the shotgun approach. And then the other strategy, which I think is one that I'm really working on and focusing on right now, is what I call anchor account strategies. So there's some on and off premise national chains that really want to do business with you. So you anchor in with those accounts, and I think we all know who I'm talking about. There's the Total Wines, the Whole Foods, Yard House, Kroger. So if one of those guys comes to you and say, hey, I want to put you in these 10, these 12, these 14 states, and I'm going to guarantee you distribution into those, that really is a model where basically you go in, you anchor into those accounts, and then you build around those states and those markets. So those are kind of the strategies that I would embark on. This one's pretty critical. Timing. With 4,500 breweries in the country right now, it takes a hell of a lot longer to roll across, even just getting into 2 or 3 states. It takes a lot more time than it ever has in the past. The TTB is so far behind. There's 12-week minimum lag time right now between Fed and state approval and the whole process in order for to expand outside of your home market. So giving yourself a longer period of time if you're going to expand nationally is really critical. The other thing that you want to do is spend as much time as you can, meet and greet, and find the best distributors. I'm going to jump in a little bit later on talking about assigning wholesalers. There's a lot of paperwork, so make sure you got all your paperwork in line when you're expanding across the country. And then a little legal goes a long way. Spending a little bit of money on an attorney that's well-versed in state legislation in terms of label approval, if you got to do any sampling, ABV testing, just to spend a little bit of time with an attorney is a very good investment. It used to be, back in the day, you could just ship any kind of beer anywhere in the country. It was a lot of fun. I wish those days were still like that. When you're expanding across the country right now, or when I say across the country, it could be one state, it could be national, whatever it may be, you really have to manage your portfolio. The days of just making whatever crazy beer or crazy cider that you want to, you dump it off of the distributor, or you jump back in your truck and you go back to the brewery, and then you make another different style of beer. Those days are over. You got to build a portfolio that's easy to execute for your distributors. You got to have a story behind your brand. I wish I'd done this before you. Not every single market needs the same portfolio. What works in your home market might not work in California. We had an awesome strategy at Dogfish Head where we basically took all the brands that were high revenue, high gravity, beer geeky, uber out there in terms of stylistically, and that's what we shipped across the country. It was high gravity, it traveled well, it was a high price point, and we weren't looking for this aggressive volume gains. We were actually just looking to entice the market with our most exotic beers. So what we did is we kept our home beers, our core beers at home, and then sent these crazy beers across the country, and that's what our West Coast strategy was. That's what we pushed into those markets. And not only was it great that we captivated the consumer, we also made a hell of a lot of money because it was high revenue beer. And then you got to manage your SKUs for maximum sales. I mean, distributors' warehouses are not getting any bigger. So what you want to do is pick the portfolio of brands and pick the SKU mix that works perfect for you. If you're only going to be a 6-pack and 1 sixtel, and that's your portfolio, and that's what you think you can work on, then do that. Again, a reference back to Dogfish Head, where our West Coast strategy was only 4-packs and only sixtels, the 5.17 gallon kegs. We didn't do any half barrels out there, so we maximized our dollars per barrel and what we wanted to bring to market. And then keeping the traditional approach to your portfolio really helps. Have a core brand, have a seasonal portfolio, and maybe do some limited releases. There's some other models that go along with that, but that's a real simplistic approach. Let's not forget that the distributor has 5 minutes for you, and keeping him engaged and making it as simple for the distributor to execute is a supplier's #1 priority right now. And then think about your account base that's out there. What do you want those customers serving in those accounts that translate your story and your message to the consumer? So think about, if it's a very heavy on-premise, will this be a brand that does well in the on-premise sector for the states that I want to be in? So thinking about your account base. So those are the things that I would think about when I'm looking at my portfolio for expanding nationally. I love this slide. I just got engaged in February, and my fiance is a beer distributor. So this one's really awesome. I love it. In the beer side, we were just talking about this at lunch. Once you get married in the beer industry to a distributor, you're pretty much married for life. The wine industry and the spirits industry have been very strong in carving out franchise laws. The beer business, suppliers, once you get married, you're done. So when you're picking a wholesaler, think about where you see yourself in 5 years, not tomorrow, not the next day, not a year from now, but when you pick a wholesaler, what do you want them to do for you in 5 years? What's their level of service? What's their commitment to you? How many accounts do they call on? That's how you've got to think about when you're picking wholesalers. Survey the market on your own. Even before you go out and talk to distributors, call some accounts, get into that marketplace, see who's doing the job. Talk to the accounts that are out there, ask them who their favorite wholesalers are, look in accounts, who's got the best POS execution, who's got the best tap handle execution. I mean, really take some time to figure out who's the best in market, and do it on your own. Don't get jaded. Also plan ahead and get information. I used to do this kick-ass survey when I was at Dogfish, where it was just 1 pager, but we asked some really deep questions for our distributors before we even flew out to interview them. So we really got an understanding of how they worked, who they were, what was in their portfolio, did they have a national account team, do they do line cleaning, what's their merchandising? I mean, a really awesome survey. So plan ahead of time and get that in-house before you even go out to visit and talk to a distributor. And then when you do pick a distributor, build out a 90-day plan. Just focus on the very first 90 days that you roll out in that marketplace. I'm a huge guy that I love a bunch of tiny victories all year long that at the end of the year are a giant victory that we can all celebrate. When you give distributors small successes every month or every 90 days, they're more apt to focus in on your brand. And then there's the distributors. I've spoke 3 times on this at the Craft Brewers Conference. Distributors speak a totally different language than if you were just a little brewery and you're just starting and you walked into a wholesaler and he starts talking to you about KPIs, PODs, PFPs, billbacks, POS. I just started working with ABI. I've got an entire dictionary of acronyms that I've got to learn in the next 30 days because I'm not the smartest guy in the world and I still can't get it. But distributors speak in a totally different language, so understanding that language before you go in to talk to the distributor is critical. It's going to make you that much more smarter. Okay, the other piece I want to talk about when, again, expansion is accounts. Who do I focus my energies on? When you are thinking about embarking across the country or moving through a few states, you want to have an account plan. It can be as simple as on, off, the guys that I'm going to target, here are my 10 key craft bars that I want to target over here. Here's is great. independent liquor store retailers that I want to target over here. Here's the Whole Foods in those markets. I want to target those guys with a display program. You really need to think about, when you're expanding, who those accounts are and how you do business with those accounts. And some things to think about right now, those of you in the room that are in the beer business, or those of you that are calling on the on-prem right now is rotation nation. What do you got next? 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 There's no brand loyalty. I mean, it's really turning into what's the next hottest thing. So having a strategy to maintain a handle in some format in rotation nation is critical. The same with the off-premise. I always say the shelves and floor space aren't getting any bigger, right? I mean, there's just really, what is your strategy to maintain a little bit of shelf space or a little bit of floor space? Is it a seasonal program that you want to execute and rotate through? Is this a core brand that you're going to have in, day out, and you can promise to keep in stock? When you're looking at different states, it's critical to really figure out who your partners are. Start to think about class of trade. I just talked about there's on, there's off, there's liquor store strategies, white tablecloth strategies, there's chain strategies, there's craft beer bar strategies. You got to have a strategy for every type of class of trade. And then when you're looking at each market, who are the strong local partners? So you're focusing on, for example, Indiana, there's Big Red Liquors, or Boston, there's Cappy's. I mean, these are big, strong local guys that are only in one state. Or are there the national accounts available to me out there that are in multi-state? Like the Yard House is a great partner to be with. World of Beers is a great partner to be with. Wegmans is doing multi-state, great with craft beer. So find out who they are. And again, back to the storytelling, I always say, when you're going into an account, it's critical to have a compelling selling sentence. One of my old bosses who was owned Rogue was also VP of marketing at Nike during the Air Jordan days, and he was beat into my head, Adam, you have one opportunity, you have a moment in time. I think both the presenters before me talked about this. You have this one opportunity, distill it into a sentence. Got it. And then what is your hook to go along with that? All right, I think we just, my presentation on storytelling is going to suck compared to the one that just happened. So when you're rolling across the country, have a story. Bring your personal circus to town. Plan some events. Water your rollouts. Find the local press guys. Feed them their story. Have your media plan tied into an uploadable story, again, Instagram to Facebook to Twitter, whatever it may be. And then when you're rolling in, make sure you've got plenty of point of sale to go along with what you're doing. The last thing I want to talk about up here is people. Back in my Rogue days, 15 years ago, it's pretty easy to open up a market. You didn't need anybody, you just ship beer, right? Today, it's the most competitive environment it's ever been in the beer business. There's more people selling beer on the streets than ever in the history of beer. So having a people plan is critical. You have to forward spend. These people aren't going to pay for themselves day one. It sucks. You're going to have to forward spend into people, and you need to hire a rep as soon as possible. There are some cost-effective approaches to doing this. I started a tell-sell department at one of the breweries I worked for where we just called key accounts around the country, checked in with them, told them what we got coming. Person sat in a desk next to me, and I could hear them telling the story. And then another strategy we had was a shotgun management, where once a month they would fly into a market, work for a couple of days, fly back to HQ. The next month, fly into a market, work a couple of days, fly back to HQ. So we had like what we called a shotgun. We'd pepper people all across the country. And then getting your national accounts division built as fast as possible is critical too. National accounts can really generate a lot of business and anchor you across the country. I'm done. Any questions at all?